income people pay for almost everything. They get the worst deal by a long shot. They get screwed the most by our current tax system, and it's not even close. Okay? I know it's not.
So, I mean, you know, all the bogus math aside, what this really fundamentally comes down to is that someone told Matt Walsh that he had to pay a certain amount of taxes, and he got really pissed off. Like, coming out of the woodwork being like, FEMA, where's the FEMA money going? Apparently to the illegals. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so instead of helping out people in Florida, which Ron DeSantis initially turned down because politics, he didn't want to be seen to be a cuck to Joe Biden or the Biden-Harris administration. So yeah, no, I'm not answering that phone call. No, sir. It's like, but they want to give you money and support and help, but sure. Also, most of these Republicans voted against FEMA, wanted to defund FEMA and anything used to be able to help. That, like, this is going to become crucial in the future. Like, this stuff isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. They're going to get worse. Now, instead of having one, like, wow, this is a once-in-a-lifetime storm, it truly is. Now there's like four. There's four happening at the same time. Just happening, like, oh, a new one is forming. It's weird. How is this? It's the weather machines and the illegals. It's the immigrants and again, the X-Men who are doing this.
Deployed repeatedly to deal with Kamala Harris's wide open border and the migrant invasion that it's caused. That lack of focus on their core mission, that distraction, and focusing instead on illegal immigrants, I guarantee that it has made the disaster response worse.
Okay, that's false. Both FEMA and the White House dispute those claims, saying the disaster relief fund is completely separate from other programs. But again, it's not really surprising this is the way the right wing and Republicans, even high-ranking ones, are reacting. The guy at the top of the ticket, right? It was never going to be the case they would see the real impacts of climate change, the carbon we put in the atmosphere, the heat that it's trapped that ends up in the ocean that fuels our storms. To see all that, which is, again, not hard to understand at all, after decades of denial, and be like, you know what? My bad. That's on us. We were wrong. But their behavior in the face of this dire consequence of this impending 1-2 punch for the Southeast should serve as a wake-up call to everyone.
If I guess at this point we have to start a little bit behind, but you could share this link by NASA called Climate Kids. It's recommended for grade 5. So if you have people in your life who don't understand the very basic concept of what is going on, when they hear climate change, they say it's some kind of a conspiracy. Be like, well, okay, if we go back to grade 5 science, these are things that are not disputed by anyone in the scientific community in terms of how this works. What's the difference between weather and climate? What is climate change? How do we know the Earth's climate is getting warmer? Why is the Earth warming? What does carbon have to do with it? Has climate ever changed before? A lot of very common talking points you'll get were like, oh, yeah, well, I mean, we went through ice ages. The hubris of man to think that we could actually affect the climate somehow. It doesn't feel hotter where I live. Why does climate change matter? Another common talking point. It's like, well, we still get winters. I have a snow outside, a snowball here. Look, I'll bring it all the way to Congress. Look, Congress, apparently climate change is warming the planet. Why am I holding a snowball? You idiots, you lab coats. What does climate change do to the ocean? How are scientists studying climate change? What can I do? Again, this is recommended for grade 5. So go to Climate Kids on the NASA website and then share it with them. Here's the link for anyone who needs it. It's a Climate Kids for children to be able to teach them what every kid should be learning in grade 5.
Stuck here in reality about the very real stakes of this election.
It's profoundly sad and scary, too, that, like, again, it should be an opportunity for people to recognize the actual realities of how devastating this will be to society, because that's not, like, a built-in cost to fossil fuel companies, right? Shell, Chevron, Exxon, BP. None of them have those kind of built-in costs where it's like, hey, by the way, this could destroy a significant portion of Florida today. Hey, did you see 1/3 of Pakistan is underwater? Whoa, a lot of California burnt down. Hey, British Columbia, the province, it's on fire. This created this heat dome as well. Hundreds of people are dying. Literally, hundreds of people died because of that heat dome that was created, and not a lot of people had access to the kind of things they might need to stay alive, such as air conditioners, because they weren't used to that kind of heat all of a sudden just being around them. So yeah, a lot of people died during that, and it seems to be a problem that is happening globally. This is what we need to unite against as you know, a human race to defeat. I know it's sexier when the Marvel films have the aliens and the blue beam, and then they come down and they're all these generic creatures you get to blow up, and they all go gooey and squishy and stuff like that, and it's fun. But that's really what we need things like the Avengers for, aka we need to all just band together and actually try and tackle this, not keep competing against one another endlessly. Not doing this thing where it's like, hey, one country has figured out this miraculous new battery technology. Oh, okay. But do we have that? No, we don't. Okay. Are they going to be exporting it? They are. Okay. Should we just tax the fuck out of it so the average everyday consumer might not be able to afford it in our own country, but thereby maybe saving the potential for us to develop that battery technology in the future? Yes, let's do that. 100% tariffs on it, and then that'll solve the problem. At least it'll solve our industry locally, and that way we can compete against them, because we're all in competition with each other, all of us, countries. Rich people alone. Matt Walsh says, rich people are the victims of the tax system. Walsh, someone who makes $600,000 is getting robbed by the government. The government is just straight up stealing nearly half of the income of millions of American families, millions of American workers. The average American worker making $600,000 a year. That's what most of y'all are making, right? I'm not, but I assume most of you are, all of you who are watching me. So if you're all making 600 grand a year, the tax man cometh, and they're taking away your monies. It's really scary. Got to watch out for those taxis.
And did you notice something about the tax brackets? These rich people are not all billionaires. In fact, almost none of them are billionaires. There are only like 700 billionaires in the whole country. Billionaires are basically irrelevant. They barely exist. 700 in a country.
This is neat. It's fun with numbers. Numbers with Matt Walsh. You know, we can go to there's what, 338 million? We'll say 340 million just to be kind of safeties there. So 340 million Americans, but there's only about 700 billionaires. So I don't know if you know this, but 700 is a lower number. There's a lot fewer of them. There's not a lot. There's only a few. It's like under 1,000. So there's barely a blip on the population. Not a lot. So why does everyone care about them so much? Why does everyone talk about them? Why does the left obsess over these billionaires when there's not that many of them? Like, again, 700 versus, what, 340 million people around there? I would input that it's because those billionaires hoarded all the wealth. There's not a lot of them, but if 700 of them collectively own more than half the wealth of the other 340 million people who are in the country, well then, yeah, they've earned that on the backs of all the labor of those other millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans. To become a billionaire outside of inheriting wealth, which, yes, that is something that could be done. Wealth could be transferred from one person to the next, so you can inherit your billions. Outside of that, if you want to become a billionaire, the secret is to exploit tens of thousands of people along the way, because otherwise there's just no other way mathematically to make that kind of money. You can get some VC funding, you can start up a big tech company, and the tech company can grow, but it'll grow to a size where eventually you will need thousands of people. You'll need thousands of engineers, thousands of tech support, thousands of people working there, coders, all that kind of stuff, graphic designers and stuff, until you build this little empire. You call it, I don't know, the Facebook or whatever it is, but it does grow to a size where, yeah, it can turn you into a billionaire along the way. But again, it's not possible unless you have thousands of people who are working for you and you're taking a percentage of their labor every single day to enrich yourself. That's how the whole system works. So yeah, the 700 billionaires that exist should not exist, because at a certain point we're kind of just grotesquely manipulating the system to make the Gilded Age 2.0 occur, where again, a very small percentage of people control the wealth. Now, some people have realized this, most people actually, at a certain point, that messaging by, say, like a Bernie Sanders, it's the 1% versus the 99%, people are like, yeah, that's us, the majority of the population. We're the 99%. That makes sense to me. There's only these 1% of rich assholes who control everything. Okay, that resonates. So that's why the tactic has shifted in the past, I'd say, 5 or 6 years with a lot of the right-wing pundits to start talking about, okay, well, people recognize this idea, so we're going to play into it. We're going to do faux populism. Well, we'll talk about the elites, the globalists, the cabal, the people behind the scenes that control everything, the Bilderberg group, they meet once a year at Davos, and then they control everything, and they try to manipulate our food, make us eat bugs, and say climate change is real and all this scary kind of stuff. But we're not going to actually talk about the system, the structure, and those who have all the wealth. It's not a secret. You can go online. You don't need Alex Jones. You don't need conspiracy theories. You can Google it right now. In fact, there's even Wikipedia articles on the top 100 richest people and the top 100 richest corporations, and see where all the wealth is accumulated. It's right there for everyone to see. It's so brazen, almost to a point of being almost defeating. Like, it almost feels sometimes depressing to see just how fucked up the world can be, and how sometimes the people in power, those with all the resources, don't want to do shit all to help humanity. They just want to continue to hoard. And again, it's like, I go back to that really scary story that I told a bunch of you about, where this futurist, the guy was being interviewed by a bunch of very, very wealthy people who he thought, when he was sitting in that meeting, they were going to ask him questions about climate change and what they can collectively do with all their resources to fix it. And so he sits in the room, goes to that meeting with all these billionaires, executives, all this kind of stuff. And every single one of them wanted to know how to insulate themselves from it. That was it. They wanted to know how to build mansions up in northern Canada that would be insulated from the worst ravages of climate change. How could they make the entire structure work and still be able to have all the comforts of home, hot tubs, jacuzzis, the PlayStation 6. Can I develop a PlayStation 6 if the industry doesn't exist anymore? And, he was not only so caught off guard by that he was trying to explain to them, there is no escape. Just so you're totally aware, no, there's not a scenario in which you, these extreme elites, can live in endless comfort while the rest of the world burns. It's just not going to... At a certain point, you will need outside resources. You will need to go above the surface of the earth if you're living underground. And also, are you not worried about, violent rebellion at all? Are you not worried about all the people who you have on staff working for you 24/7 suddenly just being like, we're going to kill you and take all the food because you have no power anymore? Yeah, your power, your wealth, it was all imaginary. All of it, the ones, the zeros, all of that. The internet doesn't exist, so neither does your fake bank account. But even if you have a resource that you've been hoarding, you have endless amounts of gold bricks down here. What value is gold in some kind of post-apocalyptic Mad Max future? Water is way more valuable. And so you, now the hoarder who has all this stuff, we're going to kill you and maybe eat you because ultimately, yeah, fuck you. There's going to be a massive ass rebellion. But they wanted to plan against that. So they're like, could there be a system in which I hoard all the supplies and food with a passcode, and then they wouldn't be able to do a mutiny because I would have a passcode that they wouldn't know? And then it was like, bruh, they'll torture that shit out of you. Yeah. Are you strong-willed? Have you been tortured before? Have you experienced torture? Are you able to sustain prolonged torture for extended periods of time? One that in which you think your torturers will break before you do? No? Oh, okay. You're like the rest of us? So they'll torture you, and they'll get that information out of you, one way or another. That, or they'll kill you. They'll just kill you and then probably eat you for sustenance. It's like there's not really a positive outlook. You need something else in terms of a future plan than simply saying, fuck them. Fuck them all. I know that's just basically how you govern yourself, and it's a very fuck them all policy, but it's not good.
You have 330 million people. You could confiscate all of their money, take all of it. You could put a tax rate of 100% on billionaires, and it would fund the government for a week or something.
Is that true? Is that so if we took the accumulated wealth, what is the wealth of all the richest Americans? March 2024, the combined wealth of all billionaires in the United States is approximately $5.5 trillion. That is held by 737 billionaires. This represents a significant increase of about 88% compared to their wealth at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the pandemic increased their wealth by 88%. That's fucked, where it stood at 2.94 trillion. So now it's 5.5 trillion. The top 10 richest Americans hold a combined wealth of 1.4 trillion. Throughout this period, prominent billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have seen their wealth increase dramatically. Musk's wealth surged from 25 billion in March 2020 to 188.5 billion in 2024, and Bezos' wealth grew from 113 billion to 192.8 billion over the same time. Now, his argument that he's making here, childish as it is that there's not a lot of billionaires, only about 700 of them in America, and if you took all their wealth, you could only power the government for a week. That's not what I think anyone is asking for. Even leftists who are abolish, the bourgeoisie or anything like that. They're not saying yeah, our plan is that you basically shake down the billionaires and use them to power the government, and then nothing else. So, and don't get me wrong, it would be wonderful if suddenly the people who were targeted were the people who actually accumulated all the wealth. So it's just basically like, okay, we're going to go after all the billionaires and we're going to use their money to fund things. That does sound lovely, rather than giving them mansions and yachts and boats and endless amounts of sex workers and jets and stuff like that. It would be nice if that was used for the collective good of humanity, sure, and that's the thing. But it's not as if like that will in and of itself fix society. It's not like we're going to just move the billionaires into the government, and then the government will function in perpetuity off the accumulated wealth of the billionaires. But don't get me wrong, that money, $5.5 trillion held by 737 billionaires, could do a lot of good in the world. That's 5 times the U.S. military budget, so that is quite a lot of money. You could certainly build housing for every single American. You could put money in the pockets of every single American as well. There was a really good interview on the Majority Report not too long ago where I forget the name of the author. If someone can remember it in chat, please let me know. But they'd written a book about how much wealth every single American would have if billionaires didn't exist. These are still millionaires. There's still people who have vast sums of money. And again, do you need more than like $10 million? Like, again, $10 million is an unfathomable amount of money to me. And the very idea of having that much wealth, like I feel like you could be comfortable for the rest of your days, but then there are people who like, oh, well, I have 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 million, 200 million. Do you have $200 million? That's it. Again, you could buy a city. Like that's so much fucking cash. And it's like, well, the 500 million, 600 million, 700, 800 million, 900 million. We're still not at a billionaire yet, but you have $900 million. That's, again, more money than I would assume anybody needs to be able to do their everyday kind of shit and live comfortably for the rest of their days. Yeah, I'd argue you could do that with far less, right? And so, yeah, it would be a good thing if we reappropriated those kind of funds into things that generally benefited society. Matt Walsh is trying to make you feel like billionaires are small beans. There's not a lot of them, so they're not causing a lot of the world's problems because there's not just a lot of them that exist. So if 700 people are destroying the planet, if that was a reality, isn't that a really big fucking problem? That 700 people are fucking over 340 million people? 340 million people have to kind of suffer day to day for those fucking 727 billionaires. But that same book goes to show that at their estimates, they would put in the pockets of every single American close to like $100,000 just in their savings accounts by trying to shift the wealth inequality of the United States. And I was like, when you hear that number, it's kind of like, wow, so maybe there can't be these 700. These 700 people don't get to exist as billionaires. They can still exist as multi-millionaires, multi-millionaires for sure, 100, 500, $700 million. But then we'll see what the wealth transfer does. And if it put, say, $100,000 into the pockets of the average American, and this is not just wealth transfer from their actual bank accounts, right? This is moving all their resources from stock options to, the equity they have in housing and other stuff like that. But it's one of those things where, like, again, these are all just numbers being thrown around, nonsense. What isn't nonsense is the fact that, yes, there are 727 billionaires in the United States that own the majority of the wealth. They own the majority. They own more wealth than the 340 million Americans otherwise.
Okay. I mean, the government spends 16 Elon Musk's entire net worth and reduce him to poverty, which I know the left would love to do that. It would fund the government for what? 2 weeks? 2 weeks. So the billionaires don't matter.
But I still don't get this. In what world is that what you think the left are asking for? Did you see like tax the rich? And then it was like tax the rich, eliminate the billionaire to directly fund government. And that's how government will function from now on.
They don't really matter when it comes to it's marginal.
Sure, I'll accept your cookie. The richest 1% bag nearly twice as much wealth as the rest of the world put together over the past 2 years. The super rich outstrip their extraordinary grab of half of all the new wealth in the past decade. Billionaires' fortunes are increasing by $2.7 billion a day, as at least 1.7 billion workers now live in countries where inflation is outpacing their wages. A tax of up to 5% of the world's multi-millionaires and billionaires could raise $1.7 trillion a year, enough to lift 2 billion people out of poverty. Well, that's not as convenient as his argument, which is that if you just used all of Elon Musk's money, you could only operate and fund the U.S. government for a week or 2 weeks tops.
It's a drop in the bucket. These tax.
It's funny. This is exactly what I was talking about, though. When I was earlier, like, hey, by the way, there are millionaires who are funded by billionaires or billionaire corporations that are basically trying to convince the general population to not be mad at the people who have all the wealth and the power and the capital. Don't be mad at them. Be mad at the immigrants. Immigrants are evil. They're the bad thing. Be mad at DEI, wokeness, bridge, all that kind of stuff. Be mad at trans kids. Be mad at gay kids. Those are the things you should be concerned about. But stay away from the billionaires. There's not a lot of them. They're small beans. There's only like 700 of them. Well, that would make them the only dangerous minority in the U.S. then, right? The only one that needs to be eliminated is billionaires. Effectively, what you're talking about is just vast greed, wealth accumulation, and then not really using it for anything outside of whatever their tax break related charity is once a year.
Taxes on the rich are mostly screwing over people who are not billionaires. In fact, a huge number of these people are not even millionaires. Okay, again, the top tax rate, you're talking about $600,000 for a single individual. These are not most, so these aren't even millionaires.
Wait, sorry, what? If you make $600,000 a year living in the region of Texas, USA, you will be taxed at $201,578. That means per your net pay, you will be $398,423 per year, or $33,202 per month. I don't make $600,000 a year, but I will tell you that I could live pretty comfy on $33,000 a month. This is a teacher's salary every fucking month. In what world is this the average working American? Like, it should be higher. Like, you're still getting $400,000 a year. You can buy a condo. Like, God damn it. Yes, but the average American, working, earning $600,000 a year, they're getting taxed at the highest bracket. They're taking their money.
And while that's happening, these idiot liberals are pretending that actually somehow, by some voodoo magic, public school teachers are paying more in taxes than people who have to fork over 40% of their income to the federal government.
Yes, because it's per ratio. It's relative. Just because the millionaire, not even millionaires, just because of the hardworking American who owns $600,000 a year is getting taxed at a higher rate, that doesn't suddenly absolve the argument that people who are earning much less, who still pay a significant amount of their money in taxes, are going to net a lot less money. And the other thing that you should be adding to all this is that ultimately, hey, the people who are paying all that money in taxes, they're usually doing things to try and skirt having to enter those higher brackets. That bracket, which is going to be the cap, right? That's the most you can have to pay at that income level. All you got to do is form a corporation. Form a company, which a lot of people who have that kind of income already have. And then you start expensing a lot of your daily life because they are business expenses. Because, hey, by the way, I had to travel a bunch this year. I'm going to have to expense all my flights. So those flights were business expenses. So that's not actually money that I can declare as, net income. I had to eat well. And how am I supposed to entertain other people? I need to eat very, very lavish dinners at very expensive places. Those are business expenses.
And we went over this already, but higher income people, by that I mean, and the IRS means, more importantly, people who make $600K or more, not billionaires, not even close to billionaires.
By the way, this is not directly related, but a little bit. I don't know if you saw the Irvine Police Department said, we are excited to unveil what we believe is the first police Tesla Cybertruck in the nation. The truck will support our drug abuse resistance education program and community outreach efforts. Details in the comments. Let's see how cool this is. Whoa. What? Whoa. You're using the Terminator, but it's public domain. It is. We live in the Terminator times. It's so cool. And people were pointing out that in Irvine, teachers have to buy their own school supplies, but cops get Cybertrucks. Police need Cybertrucks, and teachers need to buy their own school supplies, because fuck them kids, am I right?
higher income people pay for almost everything. They get the worst deal by a long shot. They get screwed the most by our current tax system, and it's not even close. Okay? I know it's not.
So, I mean, you know, all the bogus math aside, what this really fundamentally comes down to is that someone told Matt Walsh that he had to pay a certain amount of taxes, and he got really pissed off. Oh, I'm doing a segment on that. Fucking hell. What? I'm making over $600,000 a year. I'm taxed half on that. So I am paying more in taxes than anyone else. Any other income bracket. I pay the most. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Why are we going after billionaires? There's only like 700 of them. You think 700 people are destroying society? There's literally millions of Americans, hundreds of millions of them. And we're going to go after these 727 people? The fuck is wrong with all of you? And it's like, you're making $600,000 a year and you're getting taxed $200,000 of that. You're taking home $400,000 a year. You're quite cozy, I assume. I would be cozy, and I live in an extremely expensive city. But $400,000 a year, $33,000 a month, that's after tax. That sounds okay. That sounds quite comfortable, actually. And yeah, maybe the $200,000 should be used towards healthcare, schools, education, roads. Roads are cool. The roads that the cyber Tesla police cars drive on.
A popular thing. It's not very populist to say that. Oh, you know, boo-hoo. Someone who makes $600K is getting robbed by the government. But yeah, you know what? Yeah, boo-hoo. It's a bad thing.
This is 100% his own fucking creep. The tax man came around, and then Matt Walsh was like, "What? What? No way! Oh, I'm putting them on blast."
It is a bad thing. It's actually outrageous. The government is just straight up stealing nearly half of the income of millions of American families, millions of American workers who have worked extremely hard.
He's like, you know, I know it's not popular to say, you know, defend the billionaires, but I do want to talk about, you know, something that is a lot more popular. The American worker and the average American worker, you know, working hard, 9 to 5, putting in your time, taking in that cool $600,000 a year. And then what happens? Big government comes in, steps in and says, hey, no, you can't have that $600,000 that you yourself earned. You know, again, the average American worker. We're going to take some of that. And then it's like, what the fuck? But I earned this, you know, day by day, working hard in the salt mines.
To get to where they are, and they have families to take care of, only to get ruthlessly punished for it.
Please steal and leave me $300,000, government, please. Yeah, no kidding. Like, we should all be so lucky. Again, the segment is a very narrow appeal, I guess. It's just going to be to people who have bought into the idea that, like, yes, you work hard, you can become a billionaire. Anyone can. It's the American dream. Work hard and you'll become a billionaire. At least someone who's a multimillionaire. One of the two. Unless the tax man tries to ruin that. Big government comes in and tries to steal your paycheck. It's a lot harder if you are earning, say, $40,000 a year, if you have to give the government $6,000 of that income. And I know it seems like, well, they only have to give up $6,000. This person had to give up $200,000. What does that tell you? That tells me that they have $400,000 to spend for the rest of the year on their expenses. And if their expenses do not go over $400,000, they can put that into savings or reinvest it to make even more money. They have, I would say, a lot more advantages than people who don't make $600,000 a year.
So, yeah, they are the victims of the tax system. Okay? I mean, they just are. People who make 40, 50, 60K, the average American income, they do pretty well when it comes to federal income taxes. They're getting...
But do you not understand that it's relative? That if you're making $40,000 and say you have to pay $6,000 in taxes, that $6,000 means so fucking much more to you. That's multiple months worth of rent, of food, of expenses. So yeah, that $6,000, it's not as bad as the person paying the $200,000. But they have a lot more money to blow. That's the whole point of proportional taxation.
Screwed in a bunch of other ways. Everybody is. Every American is getting screwed by the system because we have an incompetent, corrupt, wasteful government and federal bureaucracy.
An incompetent, wasteful government. God damn you, government, stealing from all of us.
That screws everybody over. No question about it. But so we're all getting a raw deal. But my point is, when it comes to the federal income tax system specifically, higher income people have by far the most to complain about.
It's ironic because they're the least. Again, if you're earning $600,000 and $200,000 is going to the government, then you're doing great. You got $400,000 for the rest of the year. You're going to be sitting pretty. Most likely, if you're earning that kind of income, though, again, I would stress that people, once they reach those brackets, are usually doing a lot of things to avoid having to pay as much as they can in taxes. And that will be really easy if you just run a company and start expensing everything as part of, say, the Daily Wire.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/The Serfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincell, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.